What's up, what's up, what's up, what's up, what's up? What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Reforge Your Life Show. I'm your host, Joe Rivera, and here at the Reforge Your Life Show, we love to show you that the comeback is more than possible. Today, I'm super excited about the guest I'm bringing to the show. Y'all are going to love her energy. Her story is incredible. She's an emergency physician. She's the CEO and founder of NasaClip. Dr. Liz Clayborne, welcome to the show.
Hi, Joe. Excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm excited that you're here also. And man, I've heard your story. It's an incredible story, but there's no way that I'm qualified to tell your story the way you can. So please, I'd love for you to share your story, your strength, and hope with the audience.
Thanks, Joe. So, I think a lot of people will find that my story is a little different than others, and that I am a practicing emergency physician. Overall, would consider myself to be really successful and really ventured off the traditional path of academic emergency medicine to be a startup founder. So I'll talk a little bit about that, but it's really like the backstory of how I made that transition that is really a testament to how I learned how to believe in myself and why I think that has fueled me into this next chapter of my life that's been so successful and exciting. So when I was a resident back in 2015, I was really struck by the number of people who came to the ER for nosebleeds. Believe it or not, we see about 500,000 ER visits a year for nosebleeds. And I just couldn't believe people would show up and wait hours to see me over such a simple problem. I was like, just hold pressure on your nose. Like, why are you here? But I found a lot of patients tend to mismanage nosebleeds. They'll almost do the opposite of what they're supposed to do. They put their head backwards instead of forwards. They pinch up here on their nasal bridge instead of down here. And most importantly, they don't hold constant pressure. And because nosebleeds are more common in kids, 2 to 10, older adults, 55 to 80, who might be on blood thinners, it's really like the least likely population to manage it well. So they panic because the bleeding doesn't stop, and they come to the ER and they think they're going to be seen right away. But for me, as a busy ER doc, I'm like, did you just get shot? Are you having a heart attack? If not, you definitely have to wait. So it was just one of those problems that was just challenging for everybody involved, especially the staff and the ED. So I was trained to tape together 2 tongue depressors to make a clip. And I'm like, why am I MacGyvering together tongue depressors? There has to be a better solution. So I created NasaClip. It's a hands-free nosebleed rescue device. This is our reusable kit that's available on our website, NasaClip.com, as well as Amazon. And it really provides simple, effective nosebleed rescue. So it has these soft medical grade sponges that you could add a vasoconstrictive agent to, like Afrin spray, which you may know as a nasal decongestant, but is actually very helpful in treating nosebleeds because it's an alpha agonist vasoconstrictor, just hard to get up the nose when it's bleeding. It will also work without any meds. And you would simply just clear your nose of clot, insert the nasal sponges, rotate it into place, and squeeze shut. It's just like that. It holds firm, constant, uninterrupted pressure to the outside of your nose, but you could still kind of continue your activities while you have it in place. So the ER, I'm able to put someone back out the waiting room, have them come back in 20 minutes, release, check for bleeding, can be rinse and reinsert during that same episode if they're still oozing. And then when you're done, the whole device disassembles, the sponges come off, and you can actually reuse the clip and have sponge refills. So back in 2015, this was just a little idea that I had in my head, but I had no idea how to bring it to fruition. So for the first 5 years, it just sat on the back burner, primarily because during that time I was graduating from residency, I was becoming a new attending physician, I got married, I had 2 kids, life was lifing. But then in 2020, this is really kind of where I feel like my founder story is really unique. I was working on the front lines pregnant. I was about 6 months pregnant in March of 2020 when the pandemic hit. And I worked at PG County Hospital in Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C. And it turned out to be the hardest hit hospital in the state of Maryland. I mean, so much COVID volume. I was intubating, meaning putting breathing tubes down people in the parking lot of the hospital. But I was also very pregnant, which was really scary at that time. And so during that time is when I first started doing a lot of national media, which is actually how I ended up eventually meeting Joe, because that was the start of my speaking career. Really talking to people what it was like to be a frontline pregnant provider. And during all this time, NasaClip was on the back burner. But during my maternity leave, and I was fortunate enough to deliver my daughter May 30th, 2020, and she was healthy, no complications. But I took my maternity leave because it was the only break, that I had to do an accelerator program for NasaClip. And this was the first opportunity I have to really see how I could bring the device to fruition, started raising capital. And from there, I really started taking it more seriously, eventually transitioned into a full-time CEO position. And since then have raised over $4 million in capital. And we've been on the market for over 2 years. And I think what's really exciting about this to me is in addition to getting a device that was once just an idea in my head that's now available in the hospitals I work in, it's also being used by sports medicine professionals for boxing, basketball, wrestling, We're on all Disney cruise ships and parks. We're talking to airlines, hotels, kids camps, a whole bunch of places that I didn't even anticipate. And we have new technology in pipeline now looking at modifying the device for intranasal drug delivery. So a better way to actually deploy Narcan or naloxone, the opioid reversal agent, that really can be life threatening. I'm sure, Joe, as you know, when someone's having a drug overdose, it's so important to have that drug be effective. So instead of doing spray, we're looking at NasaClip as a better way to penetrate the nasal mucosa and have that medication work on the first pass. But I'm sharing all this to just kind of illustrate that while I thought I had my life really figured out and I would say was really put together, this really pushed me to my limits. In 2020, when I was doing that accelerator program, the other thing I was going through is a divorce. With two small kids at home. I was transitioning to having to support myself, two small kids, and take a huge pay cut to take a risk on myself in this company. And I would say that 2020 and getting through that transition was one of the most challenging experiences of my life. But it taught me a couple of really important things, which is number one, if I believe in myself, I can accomplish anything. And I also learned that when I believe in myself, that is like kind of energetically transmitted, and just like the confidence and the excitement I have about myself, my device, my company, and my life. And other people get excited about it too, and really want to back me up in that pursuit. And since then, I just kind of continue to double down on those lessons. And so many doors have opened to me because of that.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for sharing that, and man, congratulations on the NasaClip. I mean, that's phenomenal, and I love what you're looking to do for the opiate addiction and bring that into people being able to use that for Narcan. Because man, that's still a problem out there. That
Oh,
opiate
absolutely.
addiction is really uh, taking the world by storm. I mean, I know so many people have lost their lives, and so many people who are still struggling out there. And so, yeah, I love what you're doing out there. And for the kids with the nosebleeds, and congratulations on getting into sports and boxing and all. I mean, man, you this is growing from when we met. So
Yeah,
look to where it is now is incredible.
I
I can't
know.
wait to see what it continues to do.
Exactly. We're
Congratulations.
on Amazon. We're looking at international deployment. And, I still practice clinically, Joe. So, like, to your point, a lot of people ask me, well, why do you still practice as a doc? And I'm like, well, I spent a lot of my life to train, but also I feel like emergency medicine keeps me humble, keeps me grounded, keeps me connected to people who are struggling in so many different ways. And in the ER, we see a lot of drug addiction, mental health issues. And I definitely see the effects of, drug overdoses. And we're noticing with the spray, a lot of times fire, police, even bystanders who are trying to revive patients, that nasal spray was having to redose multiple times. And so looking at NasaClip with the sponges that can have the medicine that stays inside the nose and then putting that system under pressure, I thought was like, oh, this would be a better way for that to be effective in the first application. But even outside of that, this is something that could work for migraine, allergy, some of the ketamine or benzodiazepines that we use for sedation and pain management, even some of our vaccines we deploy, intranasally. And I think for me, the reason this is exciting is it opens up a whole new market, a $43 billion market. And what I'm aiming to do is have $1 billion exit. So my big dream is to be this Black female founder that kind of transitioned from medicine and can have a company that's going to exit north of $1 billion. And I have to tell you, given that we only give 2% of venture capital to women and only 0.34% of that goes to Black women, it's such an important drive for me. Like, obviously, I'm excited that, I'm introducing this simple, elegant solution to nosebleed emergencies that you're going to see in every first aid kit. But I also want that story of me being a single mom, a physician innovator, and an entrepreneur to inspire the next generation.
Yes, yes. Put it into existence, girl. That's how it's done.
Oh, yeah. I say it all the time. So it has to happen. The
Yeah,
billion dollar
yeah,
exit.
man. That's it. That's it. You got to believe. In order for it
Yep.
to happen, belief is a big part of it. I want to go back to. I have a question though, because you mentioned about when it gets put up someone's nose. If it was being, let's say, for the Narcan,
Hmm.
um, the medication would stay there, so there's no need for a second dose, third dose. Because listen, man, to bring me back to life, it took 6 fucking cans of
Right.
Narcan. You
Right.
know,
I
so
remember you tell that story all the time.
yeah, so you're saying with the NasaClip, you wouldn't need to do another second dose, third dose. It'll just
Yeah.
stay in there, and the person will kind of just wake up and
Yeah,
be
the goal would
revived.
be that sometimes the reason we're redosing, and they probably had to redose you, is first you probably took a really large amount of narcotics that were very tightly bound to your opioid receptor. And then secondly, when you spray the medication, the naloxone or the Narcan up the nose, a lot of it dissipates. It goes into the posterior pharynx and other places where it doesn't get absorbed over your nasal mucosa, which it needs to do to get into your bloodstream and be effective. And so if you
Mhm.
think of instead of doing that, having the medication on the sponge will go in the nose and then maintain contact with that mucosa. And you put the whole system under pressure so you have better absorption over time, meaning you're kind of getting a larger dose. So the goal would be to be able to provide potentially a larger dose, or even with the same dose, you get better absorption over a longer sustained period of time, therefore making it more likely that it's going to be effective in that first application, which, as you know, Joe, is going to save lives.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Without a doubt. There's zero question in my mind that's going to save lives. How far along are you with that hitting the market for the? Uh,
Yeah, definitely more of an arduous, long process for this. Our current device is considered from the FDA a class 1 510K exempt device because it's sold with no medication on it. For nosebleeds, you can kind of add over the counter agents. But for this, it would be considered a class 2 de novo. So we would have to do some clinical studies. We initially had looking at funding from NIH, but as you know, they've heavily cut the NIH budget. So now we're looking at potentially partnering with some pharma candidates to look at their medications and some others to get through the FDA. I mean, it's not a huge path. It's not like bringing a new drug to market by any means, because we're already looking at drugs that are approved, like naloxone for intranasal delivery, just a different mechanism. And so I still think we're probably 2 to 3 years out from that reaching market. But the faster I can raise, the faster that the rest of the business grows, the faster that this technology you'll see eventually kind of on the streets and in hospitals and, helping everyday people and patients.
yeah. Man, the way you're headed with that and what you're planning there, there's no doubt you're going to get to that $1 billion exit without a doubt.
Thank
So
you.
I'm
Thank
looking
you.
forward to seeing it. But I want to go back to the story and how you got to where you are and the challenges you went through, right? Um, because you mentioned that you were going through a divorce. You also were pregnant through this journey,
Mhm.
and what is so I hear what you mentioned about, like, how you learned about the power of believing in yourself,
Mhm.
but that came from somewhere where there was a moment of disbelief, or that there was a moment of a bottom that happened. What did that look like for the audience to pick up on that,
Yeah.
the story that you were telling yourself before you got to the other side?
Yeah, I'm really open with this story and really transparent because I think it's not a unique experience, especially for women to have. So, when I was pregnant, right before the pandemic hit me, like 2 weeks before the pandemic hit, I found out about my husband cheating on me, which is just devastating, right? It's devastating to be cheated on, period, but to be cheated on while you're pregnant and then going into a pandemic where it's just scary and you don't know what's happening. I just felt like I was in my most vulnerable state, period, and I didn't have the support I needed at home from the person who I thought I was going to get it from the most. And so it really made me question, like, what am I doing as a mother, as a woman, as a physician? And how would I ever take this big risk with this company with everything else going on? And so I think what I learned is if I can make it through a pandemic where, I worked pregnant, putting my life on the line every day and was successfully able to deliver my baby girl, bring her to this world, have a newborn and a 19-month-old at home because my other daughter was a toddler, and kind of do that, without the support of a partner that I thought I was going to have. It just showed me that if I put one step in front of the other, or one foot in front of the other, that I could do anything. And it kind of gave me the idea that instead of just surviving, that I can thrive actually through those circumstances. And I
Nice.
think that because it was something I didn't expect, right? I had never been challenged in that way before. It gave me the confidence to know, like, if I can get through that, I can get through anything. And I definitely can take this dream that I have of, developing NasaClip and bringing it to market and having an exit. I can definitely make that happen. And I think the underlying driving force of me was definitely my daughters. They're now 5 and 7. And I share this other story that really illustrates why it's been really a full circle moment for me. My now 7-year-old, it's maybe like a year and a half ago, she asked me a question. She was like, "Mommy, can boys be doctors?" And she was dead serious. Like, she's genuinely curious, if
Yeah,
boys could be doctors, because in her mind, this is a girl job. You know what I
yeah,
mean? A girl job is being a CEO, is being a physician, is being on TV. Like, that's her baseline. And I mean, it's just a miraculous thing to think about, considering where we came from, right? And like how amazing it is that I even feel like I have these opportunities. For me now, have a daughter that thinks that's every day. It really helps me understand like what I'm working hard for, why it was important for me to go through this, and how much it's broadening her horizons and the future for all of our kids on this planet.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Because I mean, the biggest person you want to be a role model for is children. I mean, at least I know I do, right?
Absolutely.
And for your daughter to be able to realize, to witness what you're accomplishing,
Hmm.
man, that's the biggest gift you could give to her. You know, as a mom,
Absolutely.
is being that role model that you're being and showing her that you know what, it doesn't have to be a man that provides. It doesn't have to be a man who's successful and who's able to do these amazing things and be able to raise standards and break chains in families. I mean, that's awesome because your story isn't just it's not just your accomplishments, right? Like your accomplishments are phenomenal. But we're talking about, what you had to go through to get to where you are because that's not easy, right? There's so many women out there and men, right, who go through a situation where they get cheated on, but they stay in the situation
Hmm.
and they raise kids under that situation. And man, that's not a way to raise your children. It's not a way to show kids that that's what a relationship's supposed to be. I mean, I know people who are in marriages and they sleep in separate beds and they
Hmm.
have kids. I mean, imagine like trying to raise your kid and teach them that that's the way marriage is supposed to be. So I'm curious, what was your like? What was your moment of saying enough is enough? I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired because there's a lot of people who stay in your situation.
Yeah. And, I have a lot of compassion and grace for women that are in those situations. For me, my education and financial independence is what allowed me to step out of that. And for a lot of women, they didn't have it. And so for the women who have nothing, right, where they're like, I'm going to have to go to a shelter to leave this situation, kudos to them. But that's why I raised my girls that like you will never depend financially on
Yeah,
anybody,
you know.
because it allows you to kind of make those decisions and have autonomy over your life. But it
Mm,
really was, I think, I just remember this moment where I was at home breastfeeding my newborn Lita, and I had my 19-month-old there, and I was just like, I'm not going to show them that this is how it needs to be. Like, there's no way I'm going to raise them thinking that like this is okay and that you don't deserve to go after happiness. And I think that it takes a lot of courage. It took me a lot of courage to decide, there's cultural, religious, kind of even political expectations of what you're supposed to do in a marriage and how far you're supposed to work. And for me, everyone's decision's independent, so I don't fault anyone for making whatever decisions they did. And I actually hung in there. I didn't divorce until almost 2 years later, so I really tried for a long
mm.
time. But like, I had made that decision that I was going to have some boundaries and that they were never going to be crossed again. And it was really because I wanted my daughters to have those same boundaries. And I think ultimately, that's what we're supposed to teach our kids. I mean, even to my ex-husband, I think we're both able to be better parents, separate, because we're both trying to now strive for lives where we're not just being successful, but happy. Right. And
Yeah,
that's what you're supposed to be teaching your kids, is how to have a happy, fulfilling life, doing something that they're passionate about and that they love. And oftentimes that means making decisions that are really going to validate who you are authentically, and protect your actual happiness at all costs.
yeah, absolutely. Because if you don't protect that happiness, somebody will come and knock that happiness down and start trying to destroy your life. So you are the protector of your happiness. You guard that with your life. Um,
Definitely, and it's hard to be successful. I tell people all the time who wanna go into medicine, I speak to my residents about this. It's hard to be successful if you're not happy. Like, we were kinda talking about this a little before the podcast started, but, I think we live in a culture of hustle and grind, which, don't please believe I hustle and I grind. Like, I burn the midnight oil. You like, my team's like, "Why is this email coming out at 3 o'clock in the morning?" And I'm like, "Don't worry about it." But but at the same time, I think it's not sustainable to always be in that kind of energy and in that life. Like, there has to be some balance. And so the other thing this whole experience taught me is not to just have boundaries with relationships and other people, but have boundaries with myself about how I'm taking care of myself, how I'm protecting my peace. I'm doing this podcast on Monday with you, but Monday is actually my Sabbath day or my rest day. A lot of people ask me if I ever have like book suggestions. And one of them I always bring up is this book called Sabbath by Wayne Mueller. Highly recommended. It talks about the disease of busyness that we have in our society. Because historically, back in the day, like even when we didn't have electricity, though, the lights went off and we shut it down. Or even in the wintertime, we had more rest because there wasn't as much daylight. And that's just gone now. There's no boundaries. You can answer emails at 3 o'clock in the morning. You can always have stimulus. And I don't think we're evolved, right, to be actually doing that all the time. It's not healthy for us. And so you have to actually set up some structure to have those days of rest, because you'll be surprised how much more you can accomplish when you're coming from like a center grounded, well rested state. And so for me, especially in emergency medicine where we work shift work and we have like very chaotic schedules, it was important early on for me to be like, okay, where am I getting rest, where I pour back into myself, and where I'm showing my kids that like that's actually the way to live and have sustainable success over a lifetime, instead of just something where you're like, if I push through this, then I'll get to this next level and then I can rest. Because that never happens. As you know, as soon as you climb one hill, there's another one that you want to go after as soon as you get to the top of it. So you have to kind of have those boundaries for yourself throughout your journey.
Man, that is so important. I just hope that the audience picked up on that jewel that you dropped there, because I mean, that piece of self care is vital for success. And especially when it comes to not getting burned out. I mean, taking that day for yourself and creating the boundaries for yourself, and learning how to say no.
Mm-hmm.
That it's
The
okay to
art of
say,
saying no.
yeah, the art of saying no, right? I mean, and how vital it is, because man, if you're not out there taking care of yourself and putting yourself first, you're not going to be able to take care of your business. You're not going to be able to take care of your family.
Mhm.
Eventually there's going to be burnout. Eventually something's going to go wrong. And it's just, you're not going to be able to be to your fullest potential of what you're capable of without having that time for yourself. So I'm a big believer in the Sabbath also. So I'm glad that you brought that up. That's
Yeah.
really important.
And you can make it what you want. Like Mondays for me is what works because I don't always get weekends because I work a lot of times clinically on the weekends. But I'm like, Monday is going to be my day where I don't have to answer email, and I usually don't have work calls, and I'm making more time with my kids. Or I do something. I do acupuncture on Mondays. I do things that are really about filling up my own cup.
Yes. Yeah, because, out there being busy, pouring into other people. And if you forget to pour into yourself, you're going to end up not being able to pour into those other people anyway. So it's so
Exactly.
important to fill your cup like that. So Liz, I'm curious to move to the raising of the money
Mhm.
and, you know, the challenges that occurred for you to be a woman of color going into that world. Because I come from the world of the financial industry. I know what that looks like. What were those challenges, those hurdles that you had to overcome to get to that point of, I mean, $4 million in what, a year and a half, 2 years, you said?
About 2 years, yeah.
Yeah. So what did that look like going into that?
Yeah, it's interesting because it was not part of my background at all, right? Like I didn't even take a business course. So a lot of what I had to learn was like, self-taught, doing accelerators, picking up mentors, seeping myself in the ecosystem. But what I was really shocked to learn is the dearth of funding that goes to women and, particularly women of color. So if you think about the billions of dollars that we give to, that venture capital gives to companies, for only about 2.4% of that to go to women is just crazy to me. You know what I mean? Because I think the reason it's so surprising is that statistically, female founded teams outperform all male white teams all the time. Like we're faster to revenue, faster to profitability. We can bring 6x greater returns. So it was always interesting for me to hear that like there was this huge discrepancy in the funding allocation, even though venture capitalists will tell you like they're about their dollar, they're about their paper, and they're about like, just supporting what's successful. Obviously that's not exactly true, because if they were, they would actually be investing in a lot of Black women, because we tend to actually do great as founders. So I think that there's a degree of unconscious bias. Obviously, I think if you look at the vast majority of venture capitalists, they are white men. And so white men tend to invest in other white men because that's who they're familiar with. And it's a very risk adverse kind of financial environment. And so they may think that they're open to everyone, but they're not. And I think my journey is a testament to that. the way I illustrate how challenging it was for me to raise capital, especially that first million that I went after, and I did some pre-seed rounds that were and convertible notes, and then I did a $4 million seed raise that we're finishing up right now, which is a mix of angel investments, venture capital, and we also did 500,000 on WeFunder, which is a crowdfunding platform. But like the way I illustrate the challenge is that on average, a white male founder has to speak to about 7 contacts to get like a yes or a return on investment. A Black female founder has to speak to 10 times that amount, 70 people to get 1 yes. So you have to have some tough skin, like some true resilience, right? When I talk about like back to 2020 when I was really at that bottom, that's what taught me that I'm resilient. I'm like, if I can make it pregnant through the pandemic, dealing with nonsense at home, and then start the company out of that, like I can deal with people telling me no, because especially because I know it's going to be successful, right? And so I think that for me, the goal is to help that be different in the future. Like I don't want that to be such an uphill challenge. Part of the reason I want my $1 billion exit is not just because it would financially position me to invest in other women and people of color, but because it also signals to the entire financial community that investing in founders like me is not charity, right? I'm here to bring in return on your investment, and I plan to do that and do that well.
That's awesome, man. And yeah, I will say that um, the financial world, especially in venture capital, it is predominantly men, and there's not a lot of women in there. And man, congratulations on you for finding your way and fighting through to get that done. Because I know that that's a challenge.
Mhm.
Uh, Coming from that world, I know what it's like. So, man, that's a big accomplishment.
Thank you.
So we're talking $1 billion exit. You mentioned it a couple of times. We got to put a year on it, girl. I mean, when are we? What are we
Okay,
talking
okay, okay. I like this. I like this. So, because all my investors ask this as well. And anyone out there listening, we do have 400,000 left of our $4 million seed raise. So if there's any interest in investing, if you're an angel investor, if you have a connection to a VC, please reach out to me on LinkedIn, Elizabeth Clayborne with a Y. And please tell everyone about NasaClip, NasaClip.com. You can find us on Amazon. But I think when we close this round, we're about 4 to 6 months away from profitability with the first part of the business, which is the nosebleed device. And so the way that we look at exits in this space, because we're considered like a consumer medical good, is that you'd have an exit that's about 6 to 8 times extra revenue, right? So my goal right now is to drive into the tens or hundreds of millions in revenue. And I'll have to do that by expanding in some other markets. We're looking at the Middle East actually this year, because nosebleeds are actually most commonly caused by dry air. So places that are very humid or at elevation, like I'm born and raised in Denver, Colorado, people just traveling to Denver used to get nosebleeds just because it's so dry. So I'm very interested in the Middle East because of their climate and the opportunities there. But I think that we can successfully get to that revenue potential, plus bring on board the drug delivery platform and look at an exit within a 5 to 7 years time period. It might be faster than that. Like, we could have an overnight sensation. I keep hoping one of the kind of NBA trainers, for example, the Wizards has our device,
about?
puts it on in the middle of some game and it's like on TV, or some influencer picks it up and we go viral overnight. That's always a possibility, and we might get there faster. But if I'm looking at kind of the grind and the revenue projections we have, like I think that 5 year mark, we could get there 5 to 7, definitely under 10, right? Is really
Yeah.
my.
Maybe I could tell. Maybe I'll tell one of my New York Knicks to elbow one of your Washington Wizards in the nose and we can
There
bleed,
you
right?
go. There you go.
So, uh, I'm curious because there's beliefs that have to get cracked through in order to overcome these challenges that we go through, these limited beliefs, right? I mean, and it sounds like if I don't know if I'm talking out of turn here, but it sounds like there was like self-worth that had to get overcome and realize what your worth was. What are some of the other beliefs that you had to crack through to get over the hump and get to where you are? What was some of the
Yeah, so
old
I think
beliefs?
for women like me that are in a position where we're trying to do something that maybe you haven't seen, and a lot of people are sometimes trying to do things where they don't exactly have an exact mentor or someone who's accomplished what they're doing exactly before, you really have to be able to kind of see something without that actual tangible example in front of you. And so I think that it means overcoming a lot of the prescribed stereotypes about who you are, what you're worth, what you can accomplish, which are ingrained from birth, especially in this country, right? Like, you know, for me, just being a woman in STEM is challenging, right? For being in the sciences, for being in medicine. And it used to be that, you know, women couldn't be physicians, women couldn't be academic physicians, women couldn't be researchers. And you know, I have a dual degree actually. So I went to medical school, and at the same time as in medical school, I did a master's in bioethics. And so I come from a really unique understanding of medicine where I look at patients not as disease entities, but as like human beings and really understanding how to treat them holistically. That was not an example I ever had, right? I never met someone who was interested in what I was interested exactly that way. So I think that early on, I think this is a testament to the way that I was raised. I did have parents who instilled in me that like you can do anything that you believe you can do, that you can see. It doesn't have to be something that someone else sees or someone else has done. And that takes a lot of, and you have to take a lot of initiative. And you have to be able to kind of see past like what this 3D world is currently showing us, to bring something into it that may not exist yet, and have a real grounded belief that not only is it possible, but it's going to happen, right? So it's a really, I think it's like a manifesting energy that I possess. And it's
Uh,
part of the reason why I've been successful in fundraising is you can kind of sense that like you believe that I'm gonna make this happen, right? Like everyone's on board with the NasaClip $1 billion exit because you can sense how strongly I believe that. And that's what people grab onto is that. But if
yeah,
you have hesitation and you're just like a little not sure, people will pick up on that energetically. And then I think it makes your path harder. And so, really, I think I was fortunate to have parents that laid a foundation for me to believe in myself early on. And then I had some success that I think built up the confidence for me to know that I could do that by doing things that were like pretty non traditional in my academic path. And then on top of that, some personal challenges that really kind of gutted me and then showed me that I can get through the other side. And the culmination of all that, I think, has resulted in someone that can remain humble, right? Is practical, but still shoots for the stars.
yeah, absolutely. And I also believe that when we crack through that belief system, which it sounds like is what you were able to do, right? There's a new belief system that's built, and you're showing that example
Hmm.
to what you're talking about. But I also believe that when we crack through that limited belief and build that new belief system, there's core values that are uncovered.
Mm.
And those core values are something we're able to lean into when difficult times come up, right? Because life's shit's
Oh
gonna
yeah.
happen, right? It's
Oh
gonna
yeah.
get fucked up out there. It's not gonna be a perfect ride to success, not a perfect ride to success. Nobody's is, right? There's bumps in the road, and how we navigate through those bumps in the road is by leaning into those core values. So, what are some of the core values that you uncovered along your journey that you're able to lean into now when, things do get difficult and that you live by in your life?
Yeah, such a good point, Joe, because I think that a lot of times we get so off track in society in general because we've like wandered away from our core values. And so for me, the tenet of being a physician was about service, right? I was raised to pursue a career that could pay you to serve people in a way that you love.
Mm,
And so I think ultimately you're most successful when you're serving other people, but like in a way where you're using your gifts, your talents that really lift not just yourself up, but the community around you. So I think that service and like service to others and community is one of those big ones. I think self love is another one. Like I think it's going back to the self care and belief in self,
mm,
like having a true love of yourself, because there might be a lot of things that you're unconsciously taught that you shouldn't like about yourself or that isn't as good. And now
yeah,
we're in the, you know, realm of social media and AI, and you're constantly comparing yourself to things that may not even be real. It becomes so important for you to kind of have a foundation of love in yourself, right? Love of others, love of self. And then I think on top of that, I'm also just a big believer in like just happiness and joy, right? Like I think we undervalue the little moments in life. Like I love being a mom. And one of the reasons I love being a mom is that kids are the best at pulling you into the present moment and
yeah,
having you just experience that joy where you're there. You know what I mean? You're not thinking about the mistake you might have made or what you have to do in the future. You're not living too much in the past or too much about what's going to come. They'll pull you really succinctly into the right now. And I think that we forget how to do that as adults. And that is like a trick, right? Is to be more in a present moment. So I think that that would be my third one.
And presence is so, so vital. And I think that, with society the way it is now, everybody's caught up in, the hustle and grind. Everybody's caught up in social media. Everybody's caught up in Netflix, and the fucking, faces are glued to the phone.
Hmm.
And it's taking away from so much presence and so much incredible time that we could have with our loved ones. And people think like, man, spending time with your loved one is just sitting in front of Netflix and watching for 6 hours. I mean, what type of communication is there in that moment? What type of love is being showed in that moment? I mean, don't get me wrong, it's cool to sit down and watch a good movie or a good TV show once in a while, but man, be present with your kids. Don't have your face in your phone. Show your kids that what it is to be present, because nowadays with how easily they could be distracted from technology, if you're able to teach them that from a young age and show them how important it is to be present. And no, you know what? Now we're gonna have time for dinner. There's not gonna be phones at the table. There's not gonna be phones while we're having communication time and while we're out spending time together. It's so important to be present. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that there's people in the audience who could pick up on that and can utilize that knowledge from that, because man, it's like I can't. It's so we grew up. I know you grew up around the same time. We grew up and we didn't even have these damn cell phones. We didn't have these streaming devices. You know what I mean? So we had to go out and build relationships and play outside and hang out, and and it's important to teach our kids that, man.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, technology is always a double-edged sword. It brings so much, right? Like, there's
Yeah.
things that we love about Facebook, IG, all these things that keep us connected, right? I know what my, like, high school, friend is doing and what's going on in their family because I'm still connected,
Mm.
but it can lead to superficial, like, not real relationship because you're not really talking to them, and you kind of devalue, like, that actual physical connection and the
Mhm.
present moment with them and being outside, right? Like I'm a big believer whenever I'm stressed out, like walks are big for me. Being outside, breathing fresh air, like kind of, listening, using all of your senses is like such a good way to ground yourself when you feel like you can't get into a present moment. You can pause and be like, not just do what do I see, but what do I hear? You know what I mean? What do I feel? What do I taste? Like what am I experiencing right now? And like really soaking that up and trying to like tap into like how many senses you can call out in that moment. Like that's what I teach my kids to do when they want to settle down, because to the disease of busyness, our kids are brought up to just be like instant gratification. Like that's why they have a hard time focusing. It eats at their mental health. I mean, in the ER I see it all the time. I got 9 and 10-year-olds that are suicidal in the ER. That's crazy. It shouldn't even be possible. But the reason it's happening is because they just don't know how to settle themselves, right? They can't slow down. They're always yearning for more. And then there's so much that's inundating their mind on social media. It really is a recipe for disaster. So not just for you, but like for our whole community and especially our family and our kids, like understanding how to be present and how to ground yourself, how to tie back to like real human connection is going to be so important. And I think that's also like something that we'll have to keep in mind with AI, right? Because like that's the next thing, right, that everyone is worried about is like what an AI might bring, and has already brought really amazing opportunities to us. But like the key thing that people will remember is that there's AI will never replace human connection, right?
Yes.
We are a
Yeah.
very social species. And
Right.
people have to remember that. Like, think
Right.
about how you were evolved as a human being over thousands of years. Like, you're
Absolutely.
hardwired to have that connection, and the connection will never be to a phone, a computer, a bot, anything like that. It will still always require that human touch. And so, when you're feeling lost, I would reach for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to be clear with the audience also, like, and I think we both hit on it. Like, it's important to realize, like, it's okay to use the technology, and there's some pieces of the things we're talking about. AI, it's phenomenal for when you use it properly. Social media is good for when you use it properly, but it's about being mindful of how often you're using it and how much of it is controlling your life.
Yeah, yeah, because
Right?
it's addictive.
Yeah,
It's
and that's
designed to be
exactly
addictive.
right. Absolutely.
It's like an addiction. Like people talk about drug addictions, alcohol addictions. Like we as a population have like an addiction to our technology.
Yep, absolutely.
And it can be equally as dangerous as substances.
Yes. And you have to control it. You have to control when you do it. You know, be mindful of how often you're on it. You want to go on social media, put a time block on when you're going to be on social media, but earn that shit. Earn the time you're going to put into Netflix or social media. Treat yourself as if it's something you're rewarding yourself for. What does the rest of your week look like if you're on social media for the time you're on it? How productive were you? Did you earn that time? I
Mhm.
mean, it's really important to take a look at, how much time you're putting into it. So Liz, I'd love for you to share with the audience, where they could find you, so that they have access.
Yeah, I'm available on all kind of social media platforms at Dr. Eliz PC, so DRELIZ PC. You can also check out NasaClip at NasaClip, NasaClip. If you know anyone that gets nosebleeds, please do share to have them check out NasaClip.com, or we're readily available on Amazon. Our reusable kit, which is a device, 7 sponges, and a carrying case, is only $25. So I'm always looking for more Amazon reviews and website reviews. It really helps me. We also sell it in a single use pack. Adult and pediatric sizes. So our kid size is ages 2 to 13, and then we have an adult size for ages 14 plus. I'm also on LinkedIn, and the other thing I always mention during podcasts is I'm here to connect for people who really kind of saw something in my story. And if you want advice and you want to speak to me, if you have a dream yourself, like, please reach out on one of those platforms, and I'm happy to kind of connect to you. I did not get where I am without mentors and people that helped me. And one of the things I'll leave you with is that I think we also have too much of this mentality that we have to do it by ourselves. And really, there is no way for you to do everything by yourself. Like, you have to be able to ask for help, rely on your friends, your family, and your community, especially when things are challenging. Like, that is what they're there for. And you don't get any extra points for doing things by yourself when it's difficult. In fact, you might lose points, right? Because you didn't elect to ask for help. And I think, especially from my demographic as Black women, like, we try to be super women all the time. We try to hustle, grind. We're expected to do it all by ourselves. And we have a lot of hesitation when it comes to saying, I'm struggling and I need help. And I'm just
Yeah,
here to say that, like, I might look polished and clean and successful, and I am, but I still get down. I have challenges. And when that occurs, I ask for help.
that's right. Asking for help is so important. You got to learn to remove the ego, because the ego is what gets in the way of people not wanting to ask for help. I mean, I
Right.
know I learned that the hard way, so remove the ego, ask for help. What she's saying is so vital. And man, and thank you for giving that opportunity to the audience to reach out for you, like reach out to you for that. Because again, that just shows another one of your core values, being of service. And that's so important. So a couple of questions that I ask all my guests. Um, the first is, what does the word purpose mean to you?
Mm. I would say purpose means living brilliantly in your authentic self. So it's like shining your unique light and not being afraid to do so.
Uh, we all have that light inside of us. It's our duty as spiritual beings living this human experience to go and shine that light.
Right.
Yes. And when you hear the word reforge, what comes to mind?
Yeah, I would say that, like, how people say they're lifelong learners, right? That you're always learning. To me, reforge is part of the human experience. It means that you're never prescribed one path, one destiny. You constantly can reinvent, reforge, recreate the existence, the life, the purpose that you have. And you
Mm,
should always be actually striving to do that, because I think that it is through the challenges that you can see your most successful, brilliant nature, right? I learned the most beautiful, powerful things about myself through my challenges and reforging through those.
yes, yes. The purpose is so important. You always have you. It's never too late to reforge your life. It's never too late to reinvent yourself. It's never too late to go out there and make the change that you deserve to make. Um, so if you could go back, let's say 20 years, 20
Hmm.
plus years, whatever, to talk to your younger self, what's one piece of advice you would give yourself at a young age?
Oh, I mean, I would tell my younger self to not be afraid to take risks earlier in life, because it is in the risk taking and the belief in yourself that you're going to see the most fantastic experiences of your life. And I think that I always had an inkling of being able to do things a little off the beaten path, but I was so, so happy when I finally decided to do something that resonated with me. And I think that if I had done that earlier, I would be even, further along in my journey than I am now. So I would tell that little girl, like, take the life by the reins and just go for it.
Yes, that's right. Higher risk, higher reward,
Yeah.
right? Go hard or go home, girl. Go hard or go home. So last question. What's one thing the audience doesn't know about Dr. Clayborne that you enjoy doing for fun?
Well, I always share, you might know this, like I played football in high school. I was like the first kicker on my football team. Like people think that's crazy, but I had a long 47, consisted in the 30s. I absolutely love the game of American tackle football. I'm a Broncos fan. This year was tough, boy. That
Yeah,
playoff loss was tough for me,
every
but
year is tough, yeah.
I really enjoy watching football. I like know more about it than most people. So that'd be one thing. And then also I'm a beginner golfer, and I wish I had found out about golf earlier, because I feel like it's such a cathartic sport. It's great for
Yeah.
business, right? And relationship building, but like it's a lifelong sport. Definitely find a sport that you can do for life and like start working on it now, because you always want something that you can go back to that's active. When you activate your body, it helps you in so many ways.
Yes. Yes. I love that. Hobbies are important, man. Hobbies are important. Find something you enjoy doing out there, yeah. Um, so Liz, I want to say that I knew you were gonna come on the show and raise the roof. And I didn't think you could exceed my expectations, but you did, girl. I mean, man, talk about going hard or going home, girl. Love it. Love your knowledge and your experience, and thank you for sharing the platform with me. And I'm grateful that I was able to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, Joe. Your show and your journey is so inspirational, and I love the human presence that you bring to others, and it is inspirational. So thank you for doing this and giving others the opportunity to share a little of their journey as well.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And for all y'all out there watching, please don't forget the one thing I always ask for: LFSS. Like, follow, subscribe, and most importantly, share the episode, because you sharing this episode or past episodes, there's somebody out there that's looking to reforge their life, and they don't have the tools, they don't have the know-hows. And by you sharing that episode, you could help them reforge their life, y'all. So stay productive, stay purposeful, and stay blessed.
You've been listening to Reforge Your Life with your host, Joe Rivera. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. To learn more about Joe Rivera and how he can help you or your organization reforge your life and regain your place at the top, head on over to withjoerivera.com and follow Joe on all social platforms. The Reforge Your Life podcast was produced by Thrive Loud Productions. Thanks for listening.